All right, so when you do operations with complex numbers, we are just adding like terms. That's it. So this one is addition. And how do I know it's addition? Because there's a plus sign in between the two parentheses. So we're just adding our like terms. I'm going to add my real numbers together and my imaginary numbers. That's it. So when I add them, 2 plus 7 is 9. Negative 5i plus 3i is minus 2i. That is your final answer. That's it. All right, let's look at number 2. So this one is subtraction. So there's two different ways you could do it. You could just subtract it, or I like to change it to an addition question and distribute the negative. So what I like to do, and it's up to you if you learn different ways, is distribute the negative. So that's going to change this to a negative 8, and it's going to change my negative 4i to a positive 4i. All right, go ahead and combine your like terms. And you should get negative 5 plus 15i. All right, any questions about our first two? Adding and subtracting. All right, now let's talk about multiplying. So, big question on the test. How do I know this is multiplication and not addition? Yep, and what's not, what don't you see in between those parentheses? Yeah, there's no plus or minus. So this is multiplication. Now, however you learn how to multiply, whether that be FOIL, distributive property, whichever way, I am going to make the box, okay? So I'm making my box, and I'm putting my 3 plus 4i on the top, and then my negative 2 minus 5i down the side. And I'm just filling in my squares. So I have 3 times negative 2, that's negative 6. Negative 2 times positive 4i is negative 8i. 3 times negative 5i is negative 15i. All right, in this last box, I'm going to write this really small because we have to do some work. I get 4i times negative 5i, which is negative 20i squared. But we can never leave I squared. I can never have any other exponent besides 1. So does anybody remember what I squared equals? Negative 1. So write this down if you don't remember it. I squared is negative 1. So anytime we hit a I squared, we have to change it to a negative 1. So this is going to be negative 20 times negative 1. And when you multiply two negatives, it changes to a positive. So in that box, in that last little corner, I really have a positive 20. That's what I have. Now I'm ready to combine my like terms. So when I combine it, I always start with my real numbers. So those are my 2 real numbers. Add those together. So you have negative 6 plus 20. Which is 14. And then I'm going to add my imaginary. Negative 8 plus negative 15. I is negative 23i. Now, whenever you're writing a complex number, grammatically speaking, you should always put the real number first. But would I mark it wrong if you put negative 23i plus 14? No. It's just grammatically wrong. But you're still right. All right, any questions? All right, let's do one more multiplication and then we'll move on to division, I mean. All right, go ahead and copy this one down. I'm going to give you a few minutes to try to figure this one out by yourself, and then we'll go through it together. Yes. Do we have to make a box? You do not have to make a box. If you want to, whatever way you learned, that is perfectly fine. Okay, so that's what I ended up with in my box. Go ahead and check your 4 squares. So the first square, top left, I had negative 12. And then my second in the top row, or top row would be positive 8i. And then in my bottom row, I have a negative 3i. And over here, I started off with, because 2 times, and then it's I times I, would be I squared. So I have 2i squared, but I squared is negative 1. So this is really saying 2 times negative 1, so that's why that's a negative 2. All right, who had their box similar to my box? At least 2 of the squares, right? Okay, let's go ahead and combine our like terms. So these are my real numbers, and these are imaginary. So my final answer would be negative 14 plus 5i. And that's that. All right, so we talked about addition, we did subtraction, we did multiplication. So what do you think is next? Division. So let's talk about it. So we'll just do one at a time. And we'll just do 5 and 6 because I want you all to be lined up with first period. So there is a rule in mathematics. There are certain things that we do not allow in the denominator. One is square roots, and the other one is I. So when we are dividing, we're really just simplifying it so that there is not an I in our denominator. So here's how you get rid of the I. To eliminate I, you have to multiply. And when you multiply, you always do top and bottom by the conjugate. And that's a really fancy word. A lot of times math people try to make up words that sound complicated, but it's not even complicated. complicated. Does anybody remember what a conjugate is? So like when you factor the difference of squares, and you don't have to write this down. When you factor, for example, x squared minus 4, you get x plus 2 and x minus 2, and those are conjugates. And what's different about these two is they're identical except for what? The sign. So when you flip the sign in the middle, that's called the conjugate. So it's not really a fancy thing at all. So what do you think the conjugate of 1 plus I would be? 1 minus I. That's it. So we are going to multiply for number 5, and we're only doing 5 and 6, and then we're going to call it a day. Multiply top and bottom by the conjugate, which is 1 minus I. So the reason why this is like, is because we have to make 2 boxes. Or as Treasure knows another way. But either way, you have to multiply 2 binomials. So in the numerator, we have 6 minus I times 1 minus I. And in so this is what I'm multiplying in my numerator. In my denominator, I'm multiplying those 2. All right, so let's go ahead and fill in. We got 8 squares to fill in. Is there an Olivia in here? I thought that. In my mind, but I didn't want to say it. I was like, in my mind, I think that's Olivia. Okay. Because I got 2 of them. But I knew I had one in this class. I'm almost there with the names. I'm like so close. All right. So when we fill in the first set of boxes, we have 6, a negative I, a negative 6I, and then this one, a negative times a negative is positive I squared. But what does I squared really equal? We can't keep it there. What does it change to? Plus 1? Negative 1. I squared is negative 1. So we're ready to combine our like terms. So this is my answer. So I have the top part of my answer. So it would be a 5 and then minus 7I. That's the top. All right, now let's do the denominator. So we start off with 1 times 1, which is 1. 1 times I, which is I. Negative I times 1, which is negative I. And in this last corner in the back, we have negative I squared, which means that I have a negative times I squared, which is negative 1. So this is what is in this last column or last little box. Negative times negative 1. So what do you think this is going to change to? 1. Positive 1. All right, so what do you notice happens when I try to add my imaginary? They cancel. That's the whole purpose. Anytime you multiply conjugates, the middle term cancels, which is what we were trying to do. So my denominator is simply 1 plus 1, which is 2. And this would be your answer on the test. You got a question? Nope. All right, last one for the week. It's our first 5-day week. It's rough. It was hard. I'm like, man. Okay. So, what do you think my conjugate is for my denominator? Keep in mind that there is an invisible zero right here. We just don't put it because it's zero. So what do you think the conjugate would be? Plus 2i, positive 2i. So we're multiplying top and bottom by positive 2i. So this is a little different. We don't need to make a box because this is just one term. So all we're doing here is distributing. So I have 2i times 2 minus I. That's my numerator. And in my denominator, I have negative 2i times positive 2i. So let's go ahead and simplify. So we'll start with distributing. So 2i times 2 is 4i. Two I times negative I will be negative 2i squared. But we cannot leave it that way. So this is really a negative 1. So what do we get? 4i minus 2 plus 2. So this is the numerator. I'm working on my answer. Now let's go over to the bottom and figure that out. So those are called monomials because it's just one term. So when we multiply a negative 2i times a positive 2i, what do you think we get? Negative 4i squared. We cannot leave I squared. So we really have a negative 4 times a negative 1, which is what? Positive 4. So if this was on the test and it's worth 4 points, I'm so proud of you. You did so good, but I'm only going to give you 3.5. Why am I taking off a half a point? Because you can reduce. When you can, you should. Now, we look at the last one, which I erased, of course, because, you know, duh. But the last one couldn't reduce because we had like a 5 and a 7 and a 2. There wasn't anything that could go into 5, 7, and 2. But here we can. We can divide these three numbers by what? 2. So to get 4 out of 4, the answer I'm looking for is 2i plus 1 divided by 2. All right, you do not have to do the last one. I just want you to have it written down. So Monday we could just hit it, and this is number 7. Go ahead and copy that down.